Take him down the stairs! He's down! Get the officer!
It's truly incredible to see that footage. And while these officers were being fired upon, you can see they continued to move forward to take down the shooter. We are told that the gunman purchased that AR-15 style rifle a week ago legally from a dealership in Louisville. And now the debate over guns in America is front and center once again. So for more on this, I want to bring in Republican presidential candidate for the 2024 race, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson joins us. Governor, thanks so much for being here tonight. Clearly, there are so many important headlines tonight. We want to start with what's happening in Louisville. And since you are running to be the Republican nominee for president, if you're elected, what are you going to do to fix and address this issue of gun violence, since it's clearly one that's not going away?
Well, the important thing is that we focus on things that make a difference. And whenever you look at what happened in Louisville, a tragic circumstance, thank goodness the officers were well trained, they responded quickly, and we're getting better at that. The other aspect of it is of course, the identification of someone who might be suicidal or homicidal, and they give clear signs of that, but yet they're not identified and given the help that they need or taken the steps that are necessary to prevent them from going out and doing harm. And so I think that that's something that's going to continue to look at on the mental health side. In Arkansas, we invested in that. We invested in security for our schools, and these things make a difference. And so we learned from each tragic circumstances, and the key again is let's look at something that makes a difference. And in this case, it was the training. But we need to look more at the mental health side, what we're doing about this, and what should we do more. And I think this is an area that we can look at it from a bipartisan solution, hopefully come up with ideas that will do better.
Is there anything on guns that you would do differently? Because yes, the response here was incredibly quickly, but still, even in the time that it took, this shooter was still firing when they arrived on the scene. Several people are dead, several more, including one of those officers, is now in the hospital. Would you do anything on restricting guns if you are elected president?
No, I don't think that's the solution. And so in America, we have our Second Amendment. If you outlawed guns today, the criminals are still going to get guns. They're going to be able to do bad things with those guns. And so we have to be able to take other steps that are protective. In the circumstances that we see here, we did have a bipartisan bill that Senator Cornine worked on from Texas that addressed some issues that hopefully will make a difference as a result of what happened in Uvalde, Texas. And so we're going to learn, but it's not going to be by taking away the firearms from citizens. It's not going to be from putting further restrictions on those. It's going to be by looking at other solutions that will be protective.
One thing you've said you're open to in the past is raising the age to buy a gun like an AR-15. Given what you just said, is that still something that you would support if it came across your desk as president?
Well, the challenge, of course, is always defining these issues and defining what an AR-15 is, defining, what would be legal and illegal. And of course, in Arkansas, if you're 18, you can get a shotgun, you can go out, you can do hunting. And so the senators took a different approach, and they looked at it from improving the juvenile records that would go in that could be reviewed to try to prevent someone who is 18 from getting a weapon when they've had issues when they were younger. So there has been instances of where we've come together, we've adopted solutions and on a bipartisan basis and has some effect. So I think we need to continue those conversations, but it's not about putting more restrictions on law-abiding citizens. That's what we have to avoid.
Yeah, well, I mean, this gun was purchased legally here. So I just want to be clear, though. So your position is that you don't think raising the age to buy an AR-15 is something that would be effective here and is not something that you would sign if you are president?
I haven't seen something yet that I think would work and that would make a difference. I'll always look at new ideas that are fair, that protect the Second Amendment, but I haven't seen that yet.
I can't move on to abortion, which I do want to talk about with you as well, without noting that you are going to the NRA forum on Friday. What message are you going to be bringing when you're speaking on stage as you were scheduled to do so, Governor?
Well, we'll talk about the breadth of issues, not just the Second Amendment, but we'll be talking about energy policy in the United States. I'll be talking about pushing back against a leftist social agenda that comes out of Washington, and talking about the economy. But in addition, of course, we'll talk about school safety and what we've done in Arkansas to enhance school safety to help our local school districts, and what steps we can take. So, it's an audience.
What happens, Governor, when it's a bank, though? This didn't happen in Louisville at a school.
Well, it happened in a bank, and the banks provide security, and they have to have security plans. Just like a mall, we've had instances in malls, and they have adopted security plans. So we continue to look at improved security. And obviously, it's hard whenever you have somebody that is pure evil, or somebody who's mentally deranged, and that's why you have to have the protective measures in place. But we can look at what more can we do on that mental health side, and to make sure that those that are not qualified to get a firearm, that has prior felonies or has mental health orders that are in place, that they can't get a firearm. And that's where I think we have to look to continue to enhance the protections for our society.
Yeah, there's no indication yet from the investigation and what we heard from officials in Kentucky so far that would have been something that would have played a focus here. I do want to talk about what happened with that ruling from a Texas judge last Friday night that would effectively rule a judgment made by the FDA invalid when it came to abortion medication. Do you think a judge in Texas should be able to say that something the FDA determined doesn't stand?
Well, of course, you've got two rulings, two separate federal judges ruling different ways on it. This will ultimately probably go to the U.S. Supreme Court. And it's not unusual for a judge to review the administrative rulemaking process to see if adequate notice, if the evidence supports it or not. So it's not unusual. It's a conclusion that is differing from what another federal judge has ruled.
But those
basically,
rulings,
though,
I'll just note that other ruling came down, just for everyone else who wasn't tracking it closely, came down after this ruling from a Texas judge. We hear a lot from Republicans that are pro-life or have certain positions on abortion, that they believe it's a states' rights issue. It's something for states to decide. So if that is the position of Republicans, then why should a federal judge be able to decide what kind of medication the FDA approves?
Well, there's two issues there. One is simply that Roe versus Wade, whenever it was reversed by the Supreme Court, did return it to the states, and the states right now are making their own public health determinations based upon our democratic process. That continues. The other issue is the access to this abortion pill the FDA has approved, and it's always appropriate for a judge to review the appropriateness of it, but you've got a conflict here. I can't tell you which judge ruled the right way. Ultimately, again, that will be resolved, but that's a different issue. The states have control over it, but the federal judges obviously can review the appropriateness of administrative rulings. This happens day in and day out in our society.
Yeah, I would note some 37 states, I believe, do allow access to this abortion medication that could be affected if this judge's ruling stands. Governor Asa Hutchinson, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
And here in studio, I am joined by our Chief Law Enforcement Analyst, John Miller, as well as Sarah Seidner and Abby Phillip. Thank you all for being here. Abby, what do you make of what Asa Hutchinson is one of the few Republicans who's actually entered the race formally so far? And this is going to be a question that all Republican candidates are asked about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you saw there is a Republican candidate for president who's really sticking largely to the party line on this. But I did think it was notable that he did not want to say whether he agreed with this judge's ruling. And that kind of tracks with what you're hearing from Republicans privately, that, you know, they kind of think, a lot of Republicans think that this is not going to stand up on appeal because the contours of the decision are, by the judge in Texas in particular, are pretty far out there, even further than I think some of them are comfortable with.
Yeah, it's kind of in the weeds. Sarah, what did you make of what he said on, he doesn't think that further gun restrictions are the way to go after what we saw in Nashville and what we saw in Louisville?
I think the numbers tell you a different story. And some of the numbers that we learned just today, the Kaiser Family Foundation put out these numbers. 1 in 5 Americans have personally been threatened by a gun. This is a survey just out. 1 in 5 Americans say a family member was killed by a gun. That could also be suicide, but that is part of one of the problems. And 4 in 10 Americans report that there is a gun in the household, which it tracks because there are 1.1 plus guns for each and every American, if you just look at the numbers. But here's the thing that got me. 44% say that the guns are stored in an unlocked location. So there are tons of things that can be done to try and prevent accidental shootings, to try and prevent suicides, to try and prevent mass shootings. There are things that can be done, and not doing anything is the wrong answer every time.
Yeah, he focused on mental health and talking about hardening schools, which is often something we hear from a lot of Republicans. Not from what we're hearing, though, from the Tennessee governor, I should note, who was suggesting background checks and certain reforms that they may try to get through. John, what do you make of it?
Well, I think what we're seeing is, it's very hard for a Republican candidate to president to take a gun control position. When you look at the history, I stood on the White House lawn in 1995 for the signing of the crime bill and the assault weapons ban, and that stayed in effect for 10 years, and Republican votes did not renew it. A year ago tomorrow, I stood on the street in Brooklyn wearing an NYPD jacket, giving the press conference about the active shooter who shot 10 people in the subway, letting off smoke bombs with extended magazines with his legally purchased firearms. And in the short time that we've been talking here and the time that we've been together in this job, Michigan State, Nashville, I mean, you can go through the cities. So, we are reaching a surround sound, situation with active shooters on a near daily basis in this country, and a come to Jesus moment for politicians about, will we just keep going through the ritual of today we'll have the press conference, tomorrow we'll have the vigil, the next day we'll have the discussion about guns and not do anything about it.
And we should note, I mean, as you were just pointing out, the assault weapons ban, when it was passed, mass shootings went down in this country. And I think the idea that sort of addressing guns as part of the problem won't do anything is actually not true. Sarah was putting out the numbers. The numbers bear that out. And what's, I think, very problematic about what you hear from Republican politicians is that the American people, by and large, they say they want to take a surround sound approach to this whole thing. Deal with the mental health, deal with the security of schools, deal with the guns. But the Republican Party doesn't want to talk about guns really ever, and partly because Asa Hutchinson's heading over to the NRA, and that is the position of the gun lobby. And I think one thing we don't talk enough about is that there is a financial incentive here in all of this. There are so many guns in this country. It is a boom time for the gun industry. And so they are very incentivized to really harden the battle lines on this issue as a political matter, even though that's not where the majority of the American people.
20 million AR-15s in America, and discussion about gun control only drives sales up.
Yeah,
we
it really does.
See Republicans and Democrats also point back to that bill from last summer, but say that there's not much room left when it comes to negotiation on Capitol Hill following that. I want everyone to stand by. We're going to talk about this more ahead. Also, we're going to follow a story here in New York. The district attorney that is prosecuting former President Trump is now suing House Republicans. One of them you will definitely recognize, accusing them of intimidation. We're going to talk about the new allegations. Plus, the former president is making this claim about his visit to a New York courthouse last week.
People that worked there, they were crying. They were actually crying. They said, "I'm sorry."
Double check that. That's pretty good. Yeesh. Not crying, are you? Let's tighten that and... Ooh.
Wait, what was that?
What? No, don't worry about that. Here we go.
Asking the right question can greatly impact your future,
Are you qualified to do this?
What?
especially when it comes to your finances.
Do you have a question?
Are you a certified financial planner?
Yes, I'm a CFP professional.
CFP professionals are committed to acting in your best interest. That's why it's gotta be a CFP. Find your CFP professional at letsmakeaplan.org.
Nicorette knows quitting smoking is freaking hard. You get advice like, just stop, go for a run, go for 10 runs, run a marathon. Instead, start small with Nicorette. which can lead to something big. Start stopping with Nicorette.
Your best defense against erosion and cavities is strong enamel. Nothing beats it. New Pro-Enamel Active Shield actively shields the enamel to defend against erosion and cavities. I think that this product is a game changer for my patients. It really works.
Plates, plates, plates. There's somehow no better way to travel this place than on a plate. And when you add price drop protection, Expedia pays you back if your flight becomes cheaper. So you can taste your way through every single plate and never wonder if you found a good deal. Because the good deal found you.
Start your day with Nature Made, the #1 pharmacist-recommended vitamin and supplement brand.
Introducing Astapro Allergy. Now available without a prescription, Astapro is the first and only 24-hour steroid-free spray. While Flonase takes hours, Astapro starts working in 30 minutes. So you can Astapro and go.
Dove invited women who wanted their damaged hair trimmed.
Yes, I need a trim.
I just want to be able to cut the damage.
We tried Dove instead. So, still need that trim?
Wow. I'm actually shocked. I don't need a haircut.
Don't trim daily damage. Stop it with Dove.
When you have chronic kidney disease, there are places you'd like to be. Like here, and here, and here. Not so much here. If you've been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, Farxiga reduces the risk of kidney failure, which can lead to dialysis.
Farxiga can cause serious side effects, including dehydration, urinary tract or genital yeast infections in women and men, and low blood sugar. Ketoacidosis is a serious side effect that may lead to death. A rare, life-threatening bacterial infection in the skin of the perineum could occur. Stop taking Farxiga and call your doctor right away if you have symptoms of this bacterial infection, an allergic reaction, or ketoacidosis. And don't take it if you are on dialysis.
Put yourself in the driver's seat. Make an appointment to ask your doctor for Farxiga for chronic kidney disease. If you can't afford your medication, AstraZeneca may be able to help.
The pepperoni on Panera's new toasted baguette is sliced a little thicker to hold more flavor. So when fresh mozzarella melts over it, that detail will be big. New toasted baguettes. Cater your next event with Panera.
All right, there's a new twist in the indictment against former President Trump tonight, as the Manhattan District Attorney that is charging the hush money case is now suing the House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan to stop Republicans from interfering in his investigation, he says. Alvin Bragg is now asking a judge to block Jordan's subpoena for a former prosecutor that was in his office, Mark Pomerantz, with Bragg claiming that Republicans are harassing and obstructing the prosecution of the former president. Jordan has not yet responded to this or to CNN's request for comment. He did tweet earlier today, initially after this, saying, first they indict a president for no crime, then they sued to block congressional oversight when we ask questions about the federal funds that they say they used to do it. Joining our table tonight is Sarah Fisher and CNN legal analyst and former Manhattan Chief Assistant District Attorney Karen Friedman-Agnifilo.
Very good.
Which is now I've nailed it, since you've been such an expert on all of this since last week, as you were closely watching Trump go into that courthouse with us. Are you surprised by this lawsuit from Alvin Bragg?
It was a major fight back hard lawsuit in federal court. Don't forget, Alvin Bragg is a state court prosecutor who's prosecuting Donald Trump criminally. This is a federal court in the Southern District of New York, civil case where it's Alvin Bragg versus Jim Jordan, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and also Mark Pomerantz, because he's a necessary defendant to be joined with this. And it's not a civil suit for money damages or anything like that. It's a civil suit for an injunction where he's asking for specific relief, which is basically to stop interfering with the criminal investigation, don't make Mark Pomerantz come testify, and stay out of a New York State criminal prosecution.
I mean, you know what's so striking to me, just reading the lawsuit? Well, first of all, they cite, some constitutional, the state's ability to prosecute these cases, but also just common sense. And I think that's I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to go with the common sense part of this, which is that you read Jim Jordan's tweet and he says, you're prosecuting a former president for no crime. And I think it's right there in plain text. Republicans have determined how they feel about this issue and they want to stop it from happening. And I do think that that kind of crosses a line. And on top of that, the legislative purpose that Republicans are saying they have is that they want to pursue theoretically legislation that would force state prosecutors, whenever they're looking into a former president or I guess a current president, to move those cases into federal court, which I don't know, Karen, you tell me. I mean, that sounds like an overstepping and from a sort of separation, a federalist perspective, and Republicans are supposed to believe in federalism. That seems to cross a pretty bright line.
But Sarah, do you feel like they have pretty broad oversight when it comes to Congress? Because what they're noting there is they asked about the federal funds, and Bragg's office has said they spent about $5,000 worth of federal money on the investigations into Trump and his company between October 2019, August 2021. Most of it, they said, was on litigation related to his court battle over his tax returns.
Well, I think the question is, this feels very unprecedented. So you ask, do they have authority over it? I mean, this lawsuit itself is unprecedented. We've never had anything like this. And I think the outcome of what gets decided here will determine that question. You know, I was talking to Karen before we walked up here, and I said, you know, Karen, I focus on the media. This feels like a huge deal. Am I wrong? Is it? Because I've never heard or seen anything like this before, where you have a sitting member of Congress trying to sort of maneuver his way out of this, investigation into the former president. And Karen, to your point, you said, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like this before. And DA Bragg, in this 50-page legal filing that was filed today, he sets out a campaign of interference and intimidation because, as you said, Representative Jim Jordan is trying to say, yes, it's because of these $5,000 in federal funds, and that you claim that you have oversight over that. But really what Alvin Bragg sets out with, including all the tweets by the former president, as well as Jim Jordan and others. He also included the photo of the baseball bat near Alvin Bragg's head. He talks about the racial slurs, the dog whistles, and also that as a result of this campaign of intimidation by Jim Jordan and others and Trump that has been coordinated, that Alvin Bragg has gotten over 1,000 threats since then, including white powder in his office, really hateful racial slurs that have been directed at him and others. And so he's really made, I think, an excellent case that this is an effort to intimidate him into not prosecuting versus legitimate legislative oversight.
And what he said was part of when he got all those threats was after Trump had initially said he was going to get arrested that Tuesday. It obviously, as we know, happened 2 weeks later. Trump is weighing in on his experience, talking about this, I believe publicly for the first time, about what happened, he says, when he went into that courthouse in New York last week.
They were incredible. When I went to the courthouse, which is also a prison in a sense, they signed me in. And I'll tell you, people were crying. People that work there, professionally work there, that have no problems putting in murderers, and they see everybody. It's tough place. And they were crying. They were actually crying.
Who is they? There were a lot of reporters there. There were a lot of people there. Who was crying exactly? Because these kinds of things are said, and then it's used on other platforms to sort of say, like, look, they're in support of him. The police are in support of him. The DA, the people around the DA, it's just political. This is just another piece of trying to make him sympathetic and make the DA the devil. And the fact that there are death threats and that they are regular, and I don't know, you have all covered Donald Trump, you've covered the campaign, you've covered other campaigns. I covered extremism. I got threats, and I got threats sometimes from a certain party that would call me up in the middle of the night to say that we're all going to start calling you and you know what's going to happen next. So those are extremely scary when someone believes that they are just doing their job. No matter what anybody else says, he is the DA. He's allowed to go through with this. You follow through the process. If it was you or me, we'd have to go through it. And if they were death threats, our butts would be in trouble,
well,
as my mother would say.
Let's be honest. He was not treated like any other defendant would have
Correct.
been in that particular circumstances, nor should he have been as a former president. There are just other protocols. But the idea that the courthouse in Manhattan was a prison is pretty ridiculous. And it does remind me, I mean, Caitlin, you would remember this when in the early days of the Trump administration, he went over to the CIA and, came out of there and said, everybody at the CIA loved me so much. They thought the previous administration was so politicized, and that caused a huge uproar. It's not unlike Trump to basically make things up about what people are saying and how they are feeling to make a point about how he is the aggrieved party.
I will say I was on the 15th floor. I did not see any crying, but I was pretty far back behind a barricade with the still photographers.
I have to just jump in. You talked about like it being, he's saying, oh, it feels like a prison. You know what? It probably felt like a prison to him because he can't do what he wants to do and say what he wants to say.
And in those moments, he was not free to go.
That's right.
He was
That's
not
right.
free to go.
He's never been in.
Yeah.
Karen, you have been such a great voice on this, such an excellent voice. Thank you for joining us here tonight.
Thank you.
Up next, we are going to speak with the Illinois governor, who's going to join me on Democrats choosing Chicago as their convention city, talking about what Republicans are saying, pushing back as they've been highlighting the crime rates there. Also, Fareed Zakaria is here as Taiwan is alarmingly telling CNN they believe China is preparing for war.
I think I'm ready for this.
Heck yeah. With E-Trade, you're ready for anything. Marriage, kids, college.
Kids moving back in after college.
Finally, we can eat.
You know you make me wanna.
And then we looked around and said, wait a minute, this isn't even our stroller. You live with your parents, but you own a house in the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I don't get it.
Here's to getting financially ready for anything.
And here's to being single and ready to mingle. Who's ready to cha-cha?
What happened at Waco affected all of us. It affected the entire country.
The government refuses to take responsibility for its actions.
David Koresh, he was never going to surrender.
Somebody has to fight back.
They talk about a holy war that's coming.
You realize who we are!
I think we helped create the monster we're trying to stop.
Only on Showtime. And now stream Showtime on Paramount Plus.
When moderate to severe ulcerative colitis keeps flaring, put it in check with Rinvoq, a once-daily pill.
When UC got unpredictable, I got rapid symptom relief with Rinvoq and left bathroom urgency behind. Check.
When UC got in my way, I got lasting steroid-free remission with Rinvoq. Check.
And when my gastro saw damage,
Rinvoq helped visibly repair the colon lining. Check. Rapid symptom relief, lasting steroid-free remission, and a chance to visibly repair the colon lining. Check, check, and check.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB, serious infections and blood clots, some fatal, cancers including lymphoma and skin cancer, death, heart attack, stroke, and tears in the stomach or intestines occurred. People 50 and older with at least one heart disease risk factor have higher risks. Don't take if allergic to Rinvoq, as serious reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you are or may become pregnant.
Put UC in check and keep it there with Rinvoq.
Ask your gastro about Rinvoq and learn how AbbVie could help you save.
Good morning, everyone. We do begin with breaking news. Joining us now are two lawmakers from different sides of the aisle.
We're also live in Ukraine.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
I'm Clarissa Ward.
This policy in Denmark.
I got this mountain bike for only $11.
Dealdash.com, the fair and honest bidding site. This KitchenAid mixer sold for less than $26. This iPad sold for less than $43. And this PlayStation 5 sold for less than $1.
I want these Bluetooth headphones for $20.
I got these 3 suitcases for less than $40.
And shipping is always free.
Go to Dealdash.com right now and see how much you can save.
Do you shop for vitamins at Walmart? Force Factor products powerfully improve your health, but they're also delicious, easy to use, and affordable. That's why Force Factor is now the #1 best-selling herbs and supplements brand at Walmart. Unleash your potential with Force Factor at Walmart.
Get customizable furniture at joybird.com that complements your art, your green thumb, or just you. Now save 30% off site-wide. Plus, get free design services at joybird.com.
I'm Melanie Zanona in Washington, and this is CNN.
Is Beijing, in your view, threatening Taiwan with war?
Yes, indeed. Look at the military exercises and also their rhetoric.
A blunt response there from Taiwan's foreign minister to Jim Sciutto, sending a defiant message to China. Speaking exclusively to Jim, and this comes as China's military declared they are ready to fight and conducted an unprecedented simulation of what precision strikes on Taiwan would look like. Those involved simulating a blockade to seal off the island, which is a concern